Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today we're embarking on a really fascinating journey into one of history's most influential, yet often misunderstood philosophies, Raja Yoga. If you think you know yoga, well, get ready to dive much deeper than physical postures. We're going right to its ancient, profound roots and its true purpose. We've scoured, historical analyses and foundational texts for you, and our mission is pretty simple. Pull out the most important nuggets. Think of it as your shortcut to truly understanding this incredible path.
Exactly. This isn't merely about stretching or contorting the body like many modern interpretations might suggest. We're going to explore Raja Yoga as a comprehensive science of the mind. It's a systematic methodology for self-mastery and, well, profound spiritual realization. It's ancient wisdom, but it's also surprisingly relevant for anyone, navigating the complexities of modern life.
So if you're ready to unlock what's often called the king of all yogas, let's unpack this. And maybe the best place to begin is with the name itself, Raja Yoga. It sounds so regal, doesn't it?
Right.
What's the actual meaning embedded in that name, and how has its interpretation maybe changed over time?
That's a great place to start, yeah, because the name itself holds these fascinating layers. Most commonly, it comes from the Sanskrit word Raja, meaning king or royal. So this paints it as the royal path, or the king of all yogas, right? Immediately implying its preeminence. It suggests the yogi gains sovereignty over their own mind, ruling it like a wise monarch, embodying those kingly qualities, autonomous, self-confident, fearless. And ultimately, it hints at realizing your true identity as the king within yourself, that pure conscious self, what Patanjali calls Buddha.
Right. And here's where it gets really ingenious. This dual meaning wasn't just a linguistic quirk, was it? It seems quite strategic.
Not at all. It was, you could say, Swami Vivekananda's masterstroke when he introduced these concepts to the West in the late 19th century. See, there's also an alternative interpretation where Raja is like a phonetic rendering of Raj, meaning control.
Ah, okay. Control.
Yeah. So this shifts the emphasis from the aspirational royal goal to the really practical aspect of mastering body, breath, mind, desires. Vivekananda basically packaged Raja Yoga for a diverse Western audience. He was essentially saying, look, for the poets and spiritual seekers, it's the royal path to your inner king.
Right.
But for the scientists and pragmatists among you, it's a precise methodology for gaining control. That intellectual flexibility was, well, revolutionary. It helped bridge ancient wisdom with modern empirical thought.
That's so clever. And it also brings us to how Raja Yoga's identity itself seems to have shifted. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that historically it referred more to the ultimate goal, like that state of profound absorption, samadhi.
Yes, exactly.
Not necessarily the practice itself. So how did it evolve from being that profound state to becoming equated with a specific method or path, especially now?
You've hit on a crucial point there. For centuries, texts like the 15th century Hatha Yoga Pradipika, they defined Raja Yoga as the final elevated state of union, or samadhi. Hatha Yoga, with its physical practices, was seen as just the preparation for Raja Yoga, not the thing itself.
Okay.
The pivotal shift really came with Swami Vivekananda's influential 1896 book, Raja Yoga. Through it, he brilliantly redefined the term, essentially equating it with Patanjali's eight-limbed, the Atiga path.
Ah, okay. So he linked the name to the method.
Precisely. He codified ineffable inner experience into a replicable methodology. This led to terms like Raja Yoga, Patanjali's Yoga, Classical Yoga, Atita Yoga being used almost interchangeably today. The subtle but critical pitfall in this, though, is sometimes mistaking the diligent practice of the method for the actual attainment of the goal.
The journey overshadowing the destination.
Yeah, if we're not careful.
And Vivekananda, he was also instrumental in popularizing that standard model of the four main paths of yoga, right? Adding Raja Yoga to the three from the Bhagavad Gita.
That's right.
So we have Bhakti Yoga, the path of love and devotion for maybe more emotional temperaments. Karma Yoga, path of selfless action for active types. Jnana Yoga, path of knowledge, intellectual inquiry for philosophical minds. And then Raja Yoga, the path of formal meditation and mental control, perhaps best suited for the meditative or scientific temperament. And it's important to remember these aren't exclusive. They're often practiced together.
Absolutely. And this raises an important question. Why is it considered the king of the paths? If we connect this to the bigger picture, Raja Yoga isn't just one path among equals. You could argue it's the underlying technology of consciousness that actually empowers the other three.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, think about it. Success in Bhakti Yoga requires one-pointed devotion, right? That's a form of concentration. Karma Yoga demands detached action, free from those mental fluctuations, the vrittis. And Jnana Yoga needs sharp discernment, which is honed through meditation. Raja Yoga provides the essential tools for mind mastery. They're indispensable for deep spiritual advancement on any path. Its principles of mental control are truly foundational to all that spiritual work.
So it's not just a path among others, but maybe foundational to all others. That really powerfully explains its royal title. Okay, with that understanding of its overarching purpose, let's shift gears now. Let's talk about the figure credited with charting this entire map of the mind, Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras. This text, it's so concise, yet incredibly profound, and it's right at the heart of Raja Yoga. But Patanjali himself is quite an enigma, isn't he?
He certainly is. I mean, he's revered as the compiler of the Yoga Sutras, the one who systematized existing yogic teachings into this coherent whole. Yet his historical identity is just shrouded in mystery. Scholarly estimates for his life vary by literally a millennium, from the 2nd century BCE all the way to the 5th century CE.
Well, that's a huge range.
It is. And while modern scholars often suggest Patanjali might have been a name or maybe a title used by multiple authors, traditional Indian views often embrace the idea of a single, divinely gifted Patanjali. He's also credited with foundational works on Sanskrit grammar and even medicine. What's truly captivating, though, is the mythological identity. Traditional Hindu lore considers him a divine being, an incarnation of Ananta or Sia.
The Serpent King?
Yeah, the thousand-headed serpent king who guards wisdom. There's a popular legend that says he fell, pat into the open palms and yajna of a virtuous woman, hence the name.
Patanjali. Okay, so in essence, the who is maybe less important than the what.
Yeah.
The focus is really on the timeless wisdom and the transformative power of the teaching itself, not so much the biographical details.
Precisely. Patanjali's genius wasn't really creating a philosophy ex nihilo, out of nothing. He was acting as a master compiler and systematizer. He drew from the incredibly rich spiritual tapestry of ancient India. The primary influence is clearly Sakya philosophy.
Right, the dualism.
Exactly. It forms the metaphysical bedrock with its dualism of Pura, that's pure consciousness, the eternal self or seer, and Prati, which is primordial matter or nature. Yoga is often seen as the practical application of Sakya. A key distinction, however, is Patanjali's inclusion of Ishvara.
Okay, what's that?
Ishvara is like a special puro, a concept of God or a chosen ideal that can be an object of devotion. This leads to his system being called Sayavara Sakya, basically, Sakya with God.
Got it. And it wasn't just Sakya, was it? His work seems to have echoes of other traditions, too.
Oh, definitely. The 8-step structure of the Espirito path, for instance, it reminds many people of the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path.
Yeah.
Even the inclusion of cultivating virtues like friendliness, compassion, joy, equanimity, that's in Sutra 1.33, it points towards Buddhist influence. Plus, the ethical restraints of the first limb, the yamas, they're very similar to core Jain ethical vows.
So it really highlights Patanjali's genius, then. He took these effective techniques, stripped away maybe some of the specific ritual and dogma, and focused on the universal problem of human suffering, making it a science of the mind that feels truly universally applicable.
He essentially created a universal toolkit for conscious evolution. And the Yoga Sutras themselves are remarkably concise. They consist of just 195 or 196 terse aphorisms or sutras. The word sutra means thread, and they really do require commentary to be fully unpacked.
Right, they're dense.
Very. And they're organized into 4 chapters, or padas, guiding this logical, progressive journey. Though the structure isn't strictly linear, it's almost circular, exploring themes at deeper levels.
So it's truly like a map to liberation, with each pada, each chapter, serving a distinct purpose. Can you walk us through how Patanjali guides us step by step through this map?
Absolutely. Book 1, the Samadhipada, it sets the stage. It's on contemplation or absorption. This is where Patanjali lays down the foundational definition of yoga itself. Yoga Shittabhati Nirodha.
The famous one. Yoga is the cessation of the modifications of the mind.
That's the one. It describes the nature of the mind, its fluctuations, the vrittis, and introduces samadhi as the goal. It also brings in key principles like apisa, consistent practice, and vairagya, non-attachment.
So it's laying that foundational what, and then book 2, the Sadhanapada, that shifts to the how, right? The practical roadmap.
Precisely. This is on practice. Here, Patanjali details the actionable path for overcoming suffering. He introduces Kriya Yoga, the yoga of action, and lays out the first 5 external limbs of the 8-limbed path. That's from yama, the ethical restraints, all the way to pratyahara, sense withdrawal. This chapter also delves into the 5 root causes of suffering, known as the kleshas.
Okay, and once we've covered that practical foundation, where does Patanjali take us next? Seems like it gets more internal.
It does. Book 3, the Vibhuti-pada, is on powers or manifestations. This chapter introduces the final 3 internal limbs. That's dhyana, concentration, dhyana, meditation, and samadhi, absorption. It explains that the combined application of these 3, which is known as sanyama, can lead to the manifestation of various psychic or, supernatural powers, the siddhis.
Ah, the powers.
Yes, but importantly, it immediately issues a stern warning. These powers are potential distractions from the real goal, liberation.
Right, don't get sidetracked. And finally, the destination itself.
That's Book 4, the Kaivalyapada, on absolute freedom or isolation. This explores the ultimate nature of consciousness, the mind, karma, and that final state of liberation, kaivalya. It describes the complete and final isolation of pure consciousness, puru, from the phenomenal world of matter, prakriti. This represents the culmination of the entire yogic journey, a state of pure, untainted awareness.
That structure really does provide such a clear map. From defining the destination, outlining the journey, exploring advanced stages, and finally, explaining ultimate liberation. Amazing. Now let's dig into the why behind the how, the metaphysical worldview of Raja Yoga, its core philosophical concepts. At its heart is that cosmic duality you mentioned, Puru and Prakriti. Can you maybe unpack those 2 foundational principles a bit more?
Certainly, these are seen as 2 eternal, distinct principles coming largely from Sankhya philosophy. Puru is pure, unadulterated consciousness itself. You can think of it as the self, spirit, or the seer. It's described as a silent, passive witness, eternally free, unchanging, and actually plural. There's thought to be one for each living being. It's not a product of matter.
Okay, pure consciousness. And Prakriti.
Prakriti, on the other hand, is primordial matter, or nature, the scene. It's understood as an equilibrium of 3 fundamental qualities or forces, the gunas. Those are sattva, luminosity, purity, rajas, activity, passion, and tamas, inertia, darkness. All of creation, from physical elements to the mind, the intellect, the ego, the senses, they're all considered evolutes of Prakriti.
So if Puru is pure consciousness and Prakriti is matter, where does suffering actually come from in this worldview? Is it like a case of mistaken identity?
That's exactly it. That's where the fundamental tragedy, as some call it, comes in. The root cause of suffering, or dukkha, is avidya. That means ignorance, or more accurately, misidentification. The Purua, pure consciousness, mistakenly identifies with the Prakriti-bound body-mind complex. It takes on its limitations, its pain, its pleasure, its mortality.
And this places the mind, the citta, in a really pivotal role then, doesn't it? It's sort of caught in the middle.
Absolutely. The mind, or citta, is itself an insentient evolute of prakriti. It's made of matter. However, because it has a predominance of sattva, the quality of purity and luminosity, it's subtle enough to reflect the pure light of puram.
Like a mirror.
Exactly like a mirror. So the mind is paradoxically both the prison, trapping consciousness and identification, and the key to liberation. Raja Yoga is the science of transforming the mind from a cloudy, distorted mirror that creates a false identity into a perfectly still, clear, transparent medium that flawlessly reflects the eternal light of the true seer, the Puro.
Wow. This brings us directly back to that central axiom, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali from Yoga Sutra 1.2. Yoga is the restriction or cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. This is the definition everyone knows, but let's break down what Patanjali actually means by mind stuff, the citta and these fluctuations, the vittis.
Right. So the citta is the mind stuff. It's the total field of consciousness where all mental processes occur. And crucially, it's the repository of past impressions, what yoga calls saskaras. These are those ingrained patterns, habits, tendencies that shape our reactions and perceptions.
Okay.
The citta has 3 functional aspects. Manas, the sensory mind that interacts with the world, buddhi, the intellect that discerns and judges, and ahkara, the ego principle, which creates the sense of I-ness, of being a separate self.
And the vrittis, the fluctuations.
Then we have the vettis. You can picture them as whirlpools or thought waves that constantly disturb the surface of the citta. Patanjali identifies 5 broad categories. These cover everything from correct knowledge, pramat, and incorrect knowledge, viparaya, to imagination, vikalpa, deep sleep, nidra, and memory, sniti.
So even sleep and memory are vrittis.
Yes, they are modifications of the mind stuff. And crucially, Patanjali notes these vrittis can be either painful, klita, or not painful, aklita. The practice of yoga is about stilling the ones that cause distress and obscure our true nature.
Got it. And the final word, nirodha.
And finally, nirodha. This means cessation, restriction, stilling. When nirodha is achieved, the constant churning of the vrittis stops. In that profound silence, the seer, the purua, is revealed and abides in its own true nature, its svarupa. At all other times, when the mind is active with vrittis, the seer remains identified with those passing thoughts and feelings.
So the really profound implication here is that liberation isn't something you gain or add on. The true self is already eternally perfect and free. The work of yoga is actually subtraction, dismantling the mental constructs, quieting the psychic noise, to reveal that pre-existing perfect self. Every limb of Raja Yoga seems designed to reduce new vrittis and wear down those old saskars.
Exactly. And if vrittis are the symptoms, then the kleshas are the underlying disease. Patanjali identifies 5 fundamental afflictions or poisons. These are the root causes of all human pain and the cycle of karma.
Okay, what are they?
Foundational is avidya, or ignorance. This is that core misperception of reality, mistaking the impermanent for the permanent, the impure for the pure, and critically the non-self for the true self. From avidya springs asmita, or egoism. That's the false identification of consciousness with the limited mind and body, creating that separate I identity.
Right.
Then there's raga, which is attachment or craving, the desire to repeat pleasure and cling to pleasant experiences. And its opposite, diya, aversion or hatred, the desire to avoid pain and push away unpleasant experiences.
Makes sense.
And finally, abhinivesha. This is often translated as clinging to life or the fear of death. It's that deep-seated primal fear of annihilation that flows through all living beings, rooted in that false identification with the temporary body-mind.
Wow. Okay, so if these kleshas are the root disease, the entire path of Raja Yoga is geared towards overcoming them and ultimately reaching that profound state of samadhi, the 8th and final limb. But you mentioned it's not just one thing. It has progressive stages, right?
Exactly. It's not monolithic. We primarily differentiate between 2 broad categories. There's samprajata samadhi, which means samadhi with seed or with support. This is a lower, though still very advanced level of absorption. Here, the mind is deeply focused on an object, but the seeds of past impressions, the saskaras, are still present, though dormant. They haven't been completely eradicated. This state yields intuitive knowledge and profound peace.
Okay, with seed and the other.
The highest form is a samprajata samadhi, or samadhi without seed or without support. This is also called seedless samadhi. In this state, all mental fluctuations and their latent impressions are completely stilled, effectively fried, meaning they can't sprout again into thoughts or actions. The mind itself is transcended. The distinctions between the meditator, the act of meditation, and the object of meditation dissolve into pure, undifferentiated being.
And the ultimate goal described in the 4th book is kaivalya. That literally means isolation or aloneness, which sounds a bit stark.
It does sound stark in English, but it means aloneness in the sense of absolute freedom, realized through that asamprajana samadhi. Kaivalya signifies the complete and eternal disentanglement of the pure consciousness from prakriti, matter, and all its evolutes, mind, body, ego. The seer finally recognizes its own pristine, independent glory, completely free from the limitations of the mind and the cycles of birth and death. It's a state of pure awareness and absolute peace.
That clarifies it. And here's that profound psychological paradox Patanjali lays bare you mentioned earlier. The sutras meticulously detail these extraordinary psychic powers, the siddhis, that can arise from advanced attractus.
Right. Things like knowledge of past lives, controlling elements, becoming invisible. Really extraordinary stuff is described.
But then he sternly warns that attachment to them is the final, most seductive trap.
Exactly. It's the ultimate potential ego trip, mistaking these external manifestations of power for true inner freedom. The deepest liberation, kaivalya, demands a renunciation not just of worldly desires, but even of ultimate power itself. Realizing your identity as the eternal, unchanging seer, distinct from all of nature's play.
That's a powerful and, surprising insight. Okay, having understood that philosophical bedrock, let's turn our attention now to the really practical blueprint, the 8-limb path, or I say yoga. This is where Raja Yoga truly becomes that systematic methodology, designed to purify the body, regulate energy, and ultimately master the mind. The first 5 limbs are often called external, the Bahiraga, and the final 3 internal, the Antaraga.
And the first 2 limbs, yama and niyama, form the absolutely indispensable ethical foundation. Patanjali puts them right at the start for a reason. These aren't optional extras. They're seen as lifelong practices essential for purifying the mind and reducing those turbulent vittis. Without this foundation, the later stages are very difficult, if not impossible.
So what are the yama?
The yamas are 5 universal ethical principles guiding how we conduct ourselves, especially towards others and the world. You have hisa, nonviolence, which is paramount. It's not just about physical harm, but also mental and emotional harm in thought, word, and deed. It's surprisingly expansive.
Right.
Then satya, truthfulness, being honest, but qualified by ahisa, spoken with kindness. Asteya, non-stealing, not taking what isn't freely given, including ideas or even someone's joy. Brahmacharya, often misunderstood solely as celibacy, but more broadly means the right use of energy conserving our vital force, moderating sensory indulgence, and directing energy toward higher consciousness.
Okay.
And finally, aparigraha, non-possessiveness or non-grasping, freedom from greed, not hoarding, fostering a simpler life.
And the niyamas, those are more personal.
Exactly. The niyamas are 5 personal disciplines for self-purification. There's shaucha, purity, both external, like cleanliness of the body and environment, and internal, purity of thoughts and feelings. Santan, contentment, finding peace with what one has, accepting things as they are. Tapas, often translated as austerity or self-discipline. It's like the fire that burns away impurities and builds willpower, the perseverance needed on the path.
Okay.
Svadhyaya, self-study. This means both the study of scriptures and deep introspection, observing your own mind and patterns. And Ishvara Prachitana, surrender to God or a higher power. Devotion, offering the fruits of your actions, which acts as a powerful antidote to egoism.
So these ethical limbs are really about cleaning the slate, preparing the ground.
Absolutely, they actively clear the mental field.
With that foundation laid, we move to the psychophysical preparation, asana and posture. It's fascinating that Patanjali dedicates only 3 sutras to it.
Right. It's a huge divergence from modern yoga, where complex physical postures are often seen as the main event.
So what is its classical role according to Patanjali?
Its classical role, as defined right there in Sutra 2.46, is simply to be steady and comfortable, sthira sukham asana. The explicit purpose given is to train the body to sit for prolonged periods of meditation without being a source of distraction. To become steady, imperturbable to the pairs of opposites like heat and cold, pain and pleasure, so the mind can focus. It's truly a preparatory step for sitting.
Okay, preparation for sitting. Then pranayama, the 4th limb, that's about breath.
Yes, pranayama is the science of regulating the breath to influence prat, the vital life force energy. According to yogic physiology, prata flows through subtle energy channels called knots. And the mind and praja are seen as deeply interconnected.
How so?
Well, an agitated mind leads to chaotic, irregular breathing. Conversely, calming and regulating the breath has a direct pacifying effect on the mind. This makes breath control an incredibly powerful tool for stabilizing the mind and preparing it for concentration.
Are there specific techniques mentioned?
Patanjali discusses components like inhalation, puraka, retention, kumbhaka, and exhalation, rakaka. Later texts detail specific practices like anuloma viloma, or alternate nostril breathing, which is specifically designed to purify the nostrils and balance the 2 main channels. Aya, left nostril, associated with cooling, moon energy, and Pugala, right nostril heating, sun energy. Achieving this balance is considered a prerequisite for deeper concentration.
Okay, with the body stilled in asana and the energies calmed and balanced through pranayama, the journey truly moves inward. This is where the next limbs come in. Pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Tell us about pratyahara.
Pratyahara, the 5th limb, is a crucial bridge. It means sense withdrawal. It's the conscious withdrawal of the mind's attention from the pull of the senses and external objects.
So it's not physically shutting your eyes and ears.
Not necessarily, though that can help initially. It's more about a mental decoupling. The senses might still receive input, but the mind doesn't automatically get drawn out by them. The classic analogy is reining in unruly horses, the senses that constantly try to pull the chariot of the body towards external distractions.
How do you practice that?
Practices like focusing intently on the internal sensation of the breath, or concentrating on inner points like the space between the eyebrows, ajokakra, or techniques like yoga nidra can cultivate pratyahara.
Okay, withdrawing the mind inward. Then comes dharan.
Yes, dharan, concentration, the 6th limb. This marks the beginning of formal meditation practice. It's defined in Sutra 3.1 as binding the mind to a single place, Deshabantashit asadarana. This is the active, effortful practice of fixing the mind on one single point or object and repeatedly bringing it back whenever it wanders. It's like strengthening a mental muscle.
What kind of object?
The object can be external, like a candle flame, an image, or a sound. Or it can be internal, like the breath, a mantra repeated silently, a specific chakra or energy center, or even an abstract concept like compassion.
And from sustained dharan comes dana.
Exactly. Daya, meditation, the seventh limb, naturally arises from sustained and successful dharan. Patanjali defines it, Sutra 3.2, as an unbroken flow of awareness toward that object, tatra pratyekatanatatinam. The effort required to hold the mind on its object starts to cease. The awareness flows effortlessly, continuously, like a steady stream of oil being poured, rather than the intermittent focus of dharan, which might be more like individual water droplets.
Oh, that's a great image. Effortless flow.
Yes. And the culmination of this inward journey is samadhi, absorption, the eighth limb. Samadhi arises naturally from deep, sustained dhyan. Here, the mind becomes so completely absorbed in the object of meditation that even the awareness of oneself as the meditator dissolves.
Oh.
The mind becomes, as the sutras say, seemingly empty of its own form, and only the object of meditation shines forth. This is the state of union, the transcendence of the subject-object duality we normally experience.
Wow. And when you combine these final three internal limbs, dharan, dhyana, and samadhi, focusing them together on a single object, you get something called sayama.
That's right. Sanyama isn't a separate limb, but the simultaneous application of the last three. It's like focusing a laser beam of consciousness. Patanjali presents Sayama as an incredibly powerful epistemic tool, a way of knowing. It's the primary yogic method for gaining direct, intuitive, supersensuous knowledge called praja about the fundamental nature of whatever object it's applied to.
And this is how the siddhis, the powers, arise.
Exactly. The sutras detail how applying sayama to various subtle aspects of prakriti like the elements, the mind, the senses, can lead to profound insights and unlock those extraordinary psychic powers, the siddhis. But again, the text immediately follows this with the crucial warning, do not get attached to them. They are milestones, perhaps, but not the destination. The goal remains kaivalya.
What an incredible systematic path. Just laying it out like that shows the depth. Now let's fast forward a bit in history. How did this ancient wisdom find its way west and become such a global phenomenon? The pivotal figure here, we keep coming back to him, is Swami Vivekananda.
Absolutely. You really can't overstate his importance. The watershed moment was his powerful address at the 1893 Parliament of World Religions in Chicago. He presented Hindu philosophy, particularly Vedanta and yoga, not as some exotic foreign religion, but as a universal scientific and rational path compatible with the modern mindset. He specifically framed Raja Yoga as the psychological yoga, a practical, empirical science for controlling the mind and realizing the divine potential inherent within every human being.
And his 1896 book, Raja Yoga, which compiled his New York lectures along with his translation and commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, that really became an interpretive masterpiece, didn't it? It shaped how the West first encountered and understood yoga.
It really did. That book was an immediate success and truly marked the beginning of what we call modern yoga in the West. Vivekananda's genius lay in his remarkable ability to skillfully adapt and translate these traditional Hindu concepts for his Western audience. He integrated ideas from Western science, philosophy, and even contemporary esoteric movements like New Thought. For instance, he connected the Vedantic concept of Brahman, the ultimate reality, with Ralph Waldo Emerson's popular idea of the Oversoul, making it instantly resonate.
Clever bridging.
Very clever. He essentially presented Raja Yoga through two overlapping models. One, emphasizing the control of Prat, the vital life force, which drew somewhat on Hatha Yoga traditions and resonated with ideas like mesmerism, and another focusing on the power of the mind itself, concentration and achieving samadhi, which aligned well with emerging Western functional psychology and philosophical idealism.
But you mentioned this success was maybe a double-edged sword.
In a way, yes. To appeal to a rational, sometimes skeptical Western audience, Vivekananda strategically emphasized the scientific and psychological aspects of Raja Yoga. He tended to de-emphasize some of the more culturally specific or overtly devotional elements found in the broader Indian tradition. This brilliant adaptation, while incredibly successful in introducing yoga globally, paradoxically opened the door for future dilution and reinterpretation. You could argue that the overwhelming modern emphasis, especially in the West, on asana, The physical postures often detach from the indispensable ethical foundation of yama and yama, and sometimes even from the underlying psyche metaphysics, can be seen perhaps as an unintended long-term consequence of this very successful initial rebranding. His work was both the catalyst for yoga's global spread and, in a way, contained the seeds of its potential secularization and focus on the physical.
So a true paradox of influence there. But Raja Yoga is very much a living, evolving tradition, isn't it? Certainly didn't stop with Vivekananda. Many influential teachers and schools have carried it forward, each adding their own emphasis or flavor.
Definitely. You have figures like Paramahansa Yogananda, for example, who founded the Self-Realization Fellowship in 1920. He brought Kriya Yoga, which is an advanced Raja Yoga system focusing on specific pranayama and meditation techniques to the West, famously through his classic book, Autobiography of a Yogi. He, like Vivekananda, really stressed the scientific and experiential nature of the path. His lineage continues today through organizations like Ananda.
Right, the autobiography is iconic.
It is. Then there's Swami Sivananda, who was actually a medical doctor before becoming monk. He founded the Divine Life Society in Rishikesh, India. He formulated what he called the Yoga of Synthesis, aiming to integrate all four main paths, karma, bhakti, jnana, and raja. His clear, systematic explanations of the eight limbs were foundational for countless modern yoga teachers and schools worldwide, like the Sivananda Yoga Vedanta centers.
Okay.
We also see Swami Satchidananda, who was a disciple of Sivananda. He founded Integral Yoga and famously opened the 1969 Woodstock Festival with an invocation for peace.
Ah, Woodstock.
Yes. His integral yoga presents a synthesis of 6 branches of yoga, but he always emphasized Raja Yoga, based firmly on Patanjali, as the comprehensive roadmap for inner transformation, stressing consistent meditation grounded in those ethical principles.
And what about in India today?
Importantly, in its homeland, modern Indian schools like those in Rishikesh or Dharamshala continue to teach the 8 limbs, often with a very traditional no-frills approach. Teachers there often emphasize that asana and pranayama are essential preparations for the deeper internal practices of dharasya, dhyana, and samadhi. They actively counter that modern trend of equating yoga solely with physical postures. The core Patanjali system remains central.
So despite all the diversification and adaptation, those core principles articulated by Patanjali endure.
They absolutely do.
What a journey through the royal path of the mind. From its ancient etymological roots, trying to understand what Raja really means, to its modern global presence, it's clear that Raja Yoga is far, far more than just a set of exercises.
Indeed. I think you've seen how it offers this profound, systematic approach to understanding the mind, to really addressing the root causes of our suffering, and ultimately realizing a deeper, more liberated state of consciousness. The path is undoubtedly challenging, but its insights are, well, timeless and I think universally applicable.
It truly feels like a universal toolkit for conscious evolution. Looking back on our discussion, what really stands out to you from this deep dive? For me, maybe it's that core idea that true liberation isn't about gaining something new, adding something on, but about uncovering what's already there, just buried beneath all the mental noise, the vrittis.
That's a powerful one. Or maybe, for me, it's that subtle but absolutely critical warning about the siddhis, the powers. The idea that even the most extraordinary abilities, things we might desperately crave, can actually be the most captivating distraction from ultimate freedom. It's that final test of true non-attachment.
Yeah, that's profound. So for you, the listener, the question might be, how could these ancient principles of self-control, clarity, and ethical conduct apply to your daily life? Even if you never intend to sit in deep meditation for hours on end, what vrittis, what mental whirlpools might you begin to simply observe in yourself, or maybe even gently try to quiet?
It's worth pondering that, and perhaps exploring more of Patanjali's timeless wisdom on your own. There's so much depth there.
Absolutely. Till our next deep dive, keep digging for those insights.